Good evening, dear students. Welcome to another video tutorial of paper 18th. In our previous video, we had seen the introduction of syllabus, and I hope you all understand by the syllabus of paper 18th. I'm Lubna Mariam, and I'm teaching you biochemistry and immunology of paper 18th of your syllabus. Okay, so now let's proceed to the further topics. First of all, we'll see what is biochemistry. So this is the basic definition of biochemistry, the branch of science concerned with the chemical and physico-chemical processes and substances which occur within living organisms. If we elaborate this definition of, or if we simplify this definition, we could understand the meaning of biochemistry. Actually, we know that what are the chemical processes going on within our body. What chemical processes are nothing but like heat releasing or heat absorbing process, like we can say that exothermic or endothermic processes. And physico-chemical processes are nothing but the like digestion, excretion, uh, respiration. All these processes are nothing but the physico-chemical process. And if we talk about the plants having the most common type of physico-chemical process, that is photosynthesis. Now, from which it is produced, it produces the carbohydrate. Okay. And substances are I think I don't need to explain what are substances. You already known as you are PG students. So substances are nothing but the nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, etc, etc. These are all the substances: carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen. Okay. So all the science which deals with all these processes, chemical and physico-chemical process, and substances also, which occur within living organism. Any living organism's body produces these substances and possess these chemical processes. So the science deals with these substances is called as biochemistry. Or we can easily understand the term biochemistry by its name itself, because bio means, we know that bio means life, and chemistry is nothing but the science which deals with the study of chemical reactions. So biochemistry is nothing but the chemical processes in living organisms, study of chemical processes in living organism. So now I hope you understand the meaning of biochemistry. Now let's proceed with the unit 1 topic. First topic of unit 1 is nothing but the biomolecules. The name itself defines the meaning of biomolecules. I don't need to explain further, but there is a definition, basic definition. The molecules that are produced by the living organisms are called as biomolecules. So biomolecules are nothing but the molecules which helps in the biological processes to be completed. Okay, to be completed, to be built up. Any cell needs biomolecules to be grown up. That's why biomolecules are also called as biological molecules, because they helps biological process to be completed. In another way, biomolecules are also defined as any of the numerous substances that are produced by cells and living organisms. On simplification of these lines, we can say that cells can produce carbohydrates, cells can produce proteins, cells can produce lipids or fats. So these are what? These are nothing but the biomolecules. We know that these are the common types of biomolecules. So let's see the types of biomolecules. As we know that there are various types of biomolecules in nature are found, but there are 4 major types of biomolecules are there. Which are they? Carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. These are the four most common type of biomolecules, and these biomolecules are building blocks of a cells. These biomolecules are help a cell to build up. If Now let's see the carbohydrate first. What are carbohydrate? Now you can tell me what are carbohydrate, because I don't need to explain, because you know what are carbohydrates, because since 12th standard you had been studying these carbohydrates, proteins, fats and all. So but we have to understand it also. Still we have to understand it. So now the name carbohydrate used to designate the large class of compounds that are polyhydroxyaldehydes or ketones, or substances that yield such compounds upon acid hydrolysis. Actually, carbohydrates is a group of organic compounds occurring in living organism or living tissues and foods in the form of starch, cellulose or sugars. And on the other hand, if we talk about whenever we talk about carbohydrate, a name strike in our minds, that is sugar. We relate carbohydrate to sugary substances. Why? Because most of the carbohydrates are sweet in taste. That is why carbohydrates are also known as hydrates of sugar. Now carbohydrate also called as hydrates of carbon. Why? Because plants are the only thing which actually 60 to 90% of the plants produces carbohydrates from carbon dioxide in photosynthesis. That is why carbohydrates are also called as hydrates of carbon. The carbohydrates are most important energy providing substrates for animals, and we know that carbohydrates are also a energy giving substance for body. So this is the meaning of carbohydrate. Now let's see the general structure of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates contains only three elements: carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Okay. Originally the term carbohydrate was used to describe compounds that were literally carbohydrates. Because they had the empirical formula CH2O. I mean to say that initially, at the initial stage, or when the carbohydrates were identified, the carbohydrates initially used to describe compounds that were literally carbohydrates. What it means? Carbohydrates were considered as those substances that had empirical formula as CH2O. Means the ratio of oxygen and hydrogen in carbohydrates is the same as in water, that is 2:1. The ratio of hydrogen to oxygen is typically 2:1 in the molecule. It means that the ratio, like actually in the empirical formula, let me explain it. The empirical formula was CH2O. It was considered as that the compounds which had this type of empirical formula or this type of formula, that is only the carbohydrate. But that is not true. Some of the compounds are there which are not carbohydrates, but they possess such type of empirical formula, like formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is a gas, but it contains the empirical formula, or it possesses the empirical formula, or it having the oxygen and hydrogen ratio as 2:1. The ratio of hydrogen and oxygen in formaldehyde is 2:1 in the ratio, but it is not a carbohydrate. But initially it is considered as that the compounds which are having 2:1 ratio of oxygen and hydrogen, that is only the carbohydrate, but it is not true always. Similarly, like um, acetic acid, if we talk about acid acetic acid, that is CH3COOH. It is a carbohydrate, but it does not having the ratio 2:1 of hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen and oxygen in acetic acid is not in the ratio 2:1. Maybe there's a reason, but it is a carbohydrate. So I just want to tell you that some of the carbohydrates, they possess different empirical formula, but they are carbohydrates. And some of the non-carbohydrate compounds are also there which possess 2:1 ratio of hydrogen and oxygen, but they are not carbohydrates. That is the only thing I want to explain. Okay, now let's proceed to the we will see first of all the properties of carbohydrates, and then we will see the classification of carbohydrates. Okay, so first of all we will see physical properties of carbohydrates. Physical properties, we know what are physical properties. The properties which are measurable, that properties which we can observe, which are observable. I mean, if we talk about physical appearance of anything, so we talk about the uh, outer features. Likewise, physical properties of carbohydrates or physical properties of any substance are nothing but the properties which are measurable. So carbohydrates having the physical properties as follows: stereoisomerism. What it means? The compounds having the same structural formula, but they differ in spatial configuration. For example, glucose has two isomers with respect to the penultimate carbon atom. They are D-glucose and L-glucose. I'll explain it later in next slide. Okay. Now the second physical property of carbohydrate is optical activity. It is the rotation of plane polarized light forming positive glucose and negative glucose. Means plus and minus sign is there. The only difference, it is the rotation of plane polarized light. Optical activity, maybe MCQ, in MCQs it is asked what is optical activity of carbohydrate. So you have to keep in mind it is a rotation of plane polarized light forming plus positive glucose and negative glucose. Okay, so the next one is distereoisomers. It is also a physical property of carbohydrate. whenever the name isomers comes, we know that isomers are nothing but they are similar, they have same structure, they have same configuration. It is the or distereoisomers are nothing but the configurational changes with regard to C2, C3 or C4 in glucose, means carbon number 2, carbon number 3 and carbon number 4 will having the change configurational formula, that is called as distereoisomers. For example, mannose and galactose. If you see the structural formula of mannose and galactose, you can understand the what are distereoisomers. Now anomerism is the spatial configuration with respect to the first carbon atom in aldoses and the second carbon atom in ketoses. Now here it comes chemical properties of carbohydrates. Chemical properties. First one is oxazone formation. Oxazones are carbohydrate derivatives when sugars are reacted with an excess of phenylhydrazine. For example, glucosazone having the oxazone formation. It is a carbohydrate derivative, means it comes from the sugar molecule. It comes on upon acid hydrolysis, it build like a with an excess of phenylhydrazines. That's why it is called as oxazone formation. Next chemical property of carbohydrate is Benedict's test. What it is? We can identify the carbohydrates chemical property by doing a Benedict's test. Reducing sugars when heated in the presence of an alkali gets converted to powerful reducing species known as enadiols. When Benedict's reagents, solution and reducing sugars are heated together, the solution changes its color to orange red or brick red color. So it is actually Benedict's test is a laboratory test for identifying the chemical property of carbohydrate, or it upon when we do this test at the laboratory, so the reducing sugars shows the orange red color or brick red color, it changes the colors. Now the second property or chemical property of carbohydrate is oxidation. Monosaccharides are reducing sugars if their carbonyl groups oxidized to give carboxylic acid. In Benedict's test, D-glucose is oxidized to D-gluconic acid, thus glucose is considered a reducing sugar. So these are the chemical properties. Next one is reduction to alcohols. The carbonyl groups in open chain forms of carbohydrates can be reduced to alcohols by sodium borohydride NaBH4 or catalytic hydrogenation, that is H2NiETOH H2O. The products are known as alditols. So these are nothing but the properties, physical and chemical properties of carbohydrates. This is the first part of this video. Second part of this video will be uploaded shortly. Up to now, we'll stop here and we'll proceed in another video. Okay, so thank you so much, and we'll proceed in the next video. Thank you very much.